There we go. Finally.
Parkour.
Yeah. Parkour. All right. Hey, we are Debate Sensei. It is Matt Shapiro Esquire joining us. Tim Seavey from San Diego.
From Earth.
Yeah, from Earth, from terra firma.
All
right. I am your debate coach, professor of communications, Jared Kubika Miller, and we are going to be talking about debate-related topics. So at Debate Sensei, what we do is we talk about issues that we think are related to competitive debate, what might come up in competitive debate. And we have decided that we think that the 4-day work week is possible as a particular topic. For us, Labor Day just passed. We're going to post this a little bit later. That's funny. But there we go. 4-day work week. Tim, you were saying that you like this topic. What do you
like it just because I love labor and labor days. Anything that's a threat to more labor just seems like it's going to cause more idle hands, and we all know that those do the devil's work. So let's squash this topic. Let's make sure. Let's go back to 6 days. You know, like that would. Let's get a good Puritan work ethic going and get back to a 6-day work week.
Oh.
So you know where I stand on the subject. Matt, are you a dirty socialist that wants the people to have too much free time to, break down the machines and try and seize the means of production?
I think we'd be using more machines for the 4-day work week. First of all, I don't think the 4-day work week applies to the machines. I think it only applies to the people. But no, I we're here to talk about a little bit of pros and probably a few little cons. But I think. Yeah, all in all, it seems like as a person who has historically worked 5 days a week or sometimes more, that would be terrific. If that would be, and I could get paid the same amount of money, it seems like a win-win.
Man,
for the employee,
yeah, for
the worker bee, yeah.
Well, I mean, like, because right now it's like a 40-hour work week, and you're already. I mean, if you're doing legal work, you're usually doing more than that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, typically, the staff typically go home around 5 o'clock at the end of 8 hours, and that's they very rarely would ever see me go out the door before then. And then depending on kind of the fires of the week or the day, or if you have a little vacation coming up or something like that, normally you'll end up doing a bunch of work, so you can kind of vacation's a bad example. Anytime there's something big coming up, it's typically things just take longer than 8 hours in a day sometimes.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I thought we might do something a little bit different. Now we could talk a little bit about it before we jump into it. But what I did was I generated a short affirmative on this, and I haven't shown Tim or Matt yet. They're aware of it, but they don't know what's in it. And so I was thinking, if you're good to go, I'd like to kind of start showing this video, and we can just stop it whenever you want to jump in with a comment. Okay.
Sounds good.
Like it.
Let's try this. All right, here we go.
This is the person
Ladies
locked in
and
Jared's
gentlemen,
basement.
everyone around and in between, please allow me to explain the arguments in favor of the topic that the United States federal government should institute a 4-day work week. I understand that this topic represents a significant shift in how we approach work in this country, but I am confident that reimagining the traditional 5-day work week will better align with the evolving needs and expectations of our workforce. Allow me to address 3 contentions.
All right. Whoa.
Contention 1. Enhance.
That's trippy, man. All right. So that didn't really have a whole hell of a lot of like definitions or like proposals or anything like that.
Top of case.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you like? It seems like I got a few questions. Like, does this apply to everyone? Like, how are you implementing this is like the question I'm getting before you get into contention 1.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. The entire, in a policy style round, what's the agency doing it, funding, all those little enforcement, all those things would need to be clarified.
Yeah.
Give me some arms.
Yeah. Is it a policy round? It's like is that how you're talking about it? So like just kind of lay it out, All right. Well, let's see. Maybe it's in contention 1. Let's see.
Balancing work-life balance. Our first point highlights the pressing need to enhance work-life balance through the implementation of a 32-hour workweek. According to Senator Bernie Sanders, who advocated for such a change in a recent Guardian op-ed, American workers have faced increasingly demanding schedules and rising stress levels. With the transition to a 32-hour workweek, individuals like Sarah Johnson, a single mother working tirelessly to provide for her family, could gain more precious time to spend with their loved ones.
Who the hell is Sarah Johnson?
I don't care about her at all.
Like,
What about me?
I was waiting for some sort of explanation about who this person is, but
Sarah Johnson, who is another AI bot living 2 doors down.
She's been generating first affirmatives for this jerk named Jared for months now, unpaid.
So you can tell, like, I didn't really scan the script all that closely, and so now I'm listening to it. I'm kind of like, what is going on? It's like this hypothetical example.
I will grant her example of Sarah Johnson.
I do believe that there is a person named Sarah Johnson out there.
If I was in a round
working tirelessly, I'm going by that.
Even if they would like the New York Times talk about Sarah Johnson, it's still anecdotal in nature. You're like, okay, yeah, I get it. Fine, Sarah Johnson. She works 5 days. Her kids are crying at home. She doesn't make enough money.
Yeah, like,
I believe it. I believe it.
If I'm on the neg, I'm like, as long as we're making people up, let's get this story deep. All right, like what really motivates Sarah Johnson? It's like she was an art major and just never worked out for her, and so she's been working at it.
She wants to go home and spend more time with her children and ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Those are her two passions.
She's been spending a lot of time with her best friends and having strange feelings about it, and doesn't know
how to. She spent $17,000 at Starbucks last year, and was really wondering why her situation won't change.
Yeah. So, like, okay, like I don't understand what
we're being so mean to Sarah Johnson right now.
I don't understand what ChatGPT is doing with that. All right, let's keep going. Here we go.
Nurture family bonds and engage in personal interests. Sanders argues that this shift is not merely about reducing work hours. It's about enriching the quality of life for American workers. At contention 2.
Okay.
So,
what do you think about the first one? Enhancing
work-life balance. I mean, my first
quality of life, I would still prefer something a little bit more measurable. Yes, it is nice when quality of life is improved. I was not swayed by a 4-hour work week increasing quality of life necessarily. I need a little bit more link story there. I need you to tell me like what that means. Like at least give me some of the costs. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but like the average family spends something like, $1,800 a month on childcare because they're working. If that were cut down by one full day, that would save this much. Like you can get into the financials of it as like one piece, but even just laying out why having an extra day off, I think would be better. But this is just a very, very cursory, over the top. Also, like, is Sarah Johnson getting a 4-day work week? It seems like she should not have to work at all.
She's got a 0-day work week.
Yeah.
No.
Like, you can do a Sarah Johnson counterplan.
USFG will provide for just Sarah Johnson. 100% of the harms that you have laid out have been solved by our counterplan.
Yeah. I actually really like clever things like that. Just kind of make a point. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Right. And then I think there's a slightly humorous, but also probably kind of true. There are people who their jobs may be stressful, but they enjoy going to work. And the balance, the work-life balance, they want to be at work. They don't want to be at life.
I don't know.
So you're you're ruining their week.
You can work more, you know what I mean? It's like I think
you can work more. I mean, because that's the problem with the top of case not being laid out. It's like, is this a congressional minimum wage or not minimum wage minimum labor hour mandate, or is this just like our company policy or a strong recommendation from Joe Biden? What is this? This isn't like, because if it is a finite, you cannot work more than 4 days in a week.
So what I did was I took an article where Bernie Sanders laid out a proposal for a 32-hour work week, and it was just an article written by it. And so I'm like, hey, use this as like the foundation for your thing. And so I think it doesn't do a really good job laying out. It's like, yeah, hey, we are proposing this, where you get like you like 32 hours is the new 40 hours.
I have
right?
one more question.
There's overtime stuff. So basically what that would do is probably,
Yeah.
I'm assuming it would change the way that overtime is paid.
Are any of the contentions coming up about money?
Oh, let's see.
Well, because if they're not, then this is the point I need to talk about it.
Yeah, no, because look,
International precedents.
I mean, there's
Nope.
like that one. You know
Yeah,
what?
okay.
The one after that is about like
The communists are doing it. Why shouldn't we do it?
Yeah. All right, let's take a look.
Secondly, let's examine the international precedents set by countries like France, Norway, and Denmark, which have embraced shorter work weeks. France, with its 35-hour work week, is even considering a further reduction to 32 hours. Sanders points out that movement in this direction is already taking place in other developed countries. In fact, France is the 7th largest economy globally, and its transition to shorter work weeks showcases the feasibility of such a change. Moreover, Sanders highlights that the United Kingdom conducted a recent 4-day workweek pilot program across numerous companies. Unsurprisingly, it showed that happy workers were more productive. In fact, 92% of the companies that participated decided to maintain a 4-day workweek because of the benefits to both employers and employees.
Okay.
It's important to point out before we go any further that the French are weak of spirit. Like that's just a known fact about their kind, and so like it's not really a fair comparison.
7th largest economy. Those
7.
tiny little peons over there. How can we even match that? That's like a, if we could do it in Wyoming is one thing, but can the entire country do it? That's the question.
Well, it seems like you're kind of getting your link story now. Like you have to make the connection a little bit. It's kind of like, hey, other countries have done it and they've shown more happiness, but
Right.
I don't think it's
France, by the way, who at the current time in 2023 is on fire with outrage, and they have so much free time, they're burning the streets down.
Yeah.
After your second midday nap, come riot.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like it's not the best organization, because what you're doing is making it seem like these are separate issues rather than a unified issue, right? It seems like
it's also a fallacy appealing to populists. Everyone's doing it, so why shouldn't we do it?
Yeah, but that's what I mean is that if you make it its own contention rather than a sort of part of the overall, like the happiness, work-life balance argument,
right? It's an impact. It's an impact proof.
Now you could do the those type of fallacies in response where you couldn't do it if it was a unified argument.
So far, realistically, that second contention should be the uniqueness under the first advantage. Like, let's give some background of where this is currently happening and why there is a precedent now for an opportunity to change a thing. Like, I like the fact that so I found that same article, 1,200 companies in the UK, piloted it. So from like big companies down to little corner stores. And the fact that 92% of them kept it, that's really cool. Like, that's encouraging and shows that there is a real opportunity for it. So you can start throwing out other real examples, but then get into the links of this is why there was better performance. And then as Matt says, okay, what does that do to overtime pay? How does that change hiring policies or whatever like that? Some of that needs to be fleshed out as well.
Yeah. I think
I'm still not really hearing any impacts. How does that make the USFG, or how does that make any particular group better? What harm is being solved?
You're not at work, therefore anything is better. That's their inherent inference there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, at least you could do a correlation because they did that and found that the workers did like it. I suppose, you know what I mean. But okay.
Give me an explicit impact of therefore workers will be happier.
Oh, I like this layout. Let's do this. Here we go.
I like this alien.
At contention 3, worker demand and efficiency. Lastly, consider the strong demand for shorter work weeks within the United States. An August survey conducted by Morning Consult found that 87% of employed U.S. adults were very or somewhat interested in a 4-day work week, with slightly less than that, 82%, believing widespread implementation would be successful. Research published by 4-Day Week Global in July revealed that not one of 41 companies involved in 4-day workweek trials in Canada and the United States plan to return to 5-day weeks after the test period. Professor Juliet Score of Boston College, who led the research team, noted that the continued reduction in hours was not achieved via increased work intensity, where people had to speed up and cram 5 days of tasks into 4. Instead, they operated more efficiently and continued to improve these capabilities as the year progressed. In conclusion,
So that one is kind of like spiking out the economic disadvantage.
Yeah, it's just preemptive, like, defense.
I mean, so much of this is, needs to be articulated in the fact that, like, just because you have a 4-day work week doesn't mean your store isn't open 5 days.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, there's a little bit of, because, a bakery, for instance, or like something that, like, every day we need to make new bread for that day. So as long as we're not talking about, like, cutting back on the days food is made, or, like, it's
Yeah.
like there are some limits to this where I'm going, like, okay, just, the same guy, people on the work on the construction site day 1 through 4 are not the same 2 through 5 or something like that, but work can still get done. They talk about it in a way sometimes where, like, you can do it as much as you can in 4 days.
Well, I think what's happening is that
not always. I mean, that's not always
she's
true.
She's speaking in terms that everyone knows exactly what this means.
It's so general. It's like
I don't think that's what the popular understanding of a 4-day work week is. Like, even though, like, but if the only thing people know about it is 4-day work week, then they start extrapolating ridiculous sort of conclusions.
I mean, it's as ridiculous as this whole concept to me. So, I mean,
I do like, though, that as much as, like, I can throw shade at the French, the first business that comes in your mind of, like, so an irreplaceable company that we absolutely can't do away with is bakeries. We've got to bake stuff. That's a very French thing to say there, Matt. Of course,
hey,
bakeries.
I'm telling you, there's probably some angry French people on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday eating stale bread. That's all I'm saying. They are the most critical of their bread, and now they only get it 4 days a week.
Misinformation happens. That's how it happens.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
France has bad bread now.
Oh, that's the short right there for this whole episode. That's what we're going to cut out of this. Oh, man.
Man, if I didn't piss off the French before, you telling them that bad bread's going to do it for sure.
I have like some giant negative arguments, I think, that I would like to articulate, because it sounds so butterflies and rainbows. Like, why don't we do this?
Butterfly in the sky.
Corporate greed is what I'm going to label the top of this one. And not even corporate greed, like employer greed, meaning,
okay,
I do believe, because people working now have had to live the last 40, 50, 60, God knows how many years in a 5-day or more work week system, I can't help but feel like they will try to pay less money for 4 days a week. And that goes for salary jobs. The next thing I want to say is hourly jobs are screwed when it comes to this concept, because this reminds me of literally what Walmart, I've heard and read some things, I've seen some things in a Walmart where, Walmart, if you work full time there, you're working 32 hours a week. And the reason why they do that is because it keeps you under the necessary amount of hours to provide benefits for their employees. And literally in Walmart, in their little employee, cafe sections, they will have pamphlets on how to get onto state healthcare and, how to get food stamps. And they have these things for their employees who they're supposed to be paying and taking care of. So all I'm saying is Walmart is the inventor of the 4-day work week, who says, you can work 4 days, as to prevent you to get benefits, in so many words. So, just the number of hours an hourly worker can work is now limited, and they don't get that. It's not fixed. That 5th day would be extra money in their pocket. And for the people who do get a salary, I can't help but think, until the whole world comes to a new understanding of, like, what work is, people are going to pay. They're going to be like, why would I pay you more to work 1 day less? I mean, and it's an archaic idea. I think there are jobs where it's probably, true, like that you can do more work in 5. You can replace more carburetors in 5 days than you can in 4. There are things that like time is the issue. So
right. I think that like if that were coming out, then what you got to be anticipating is the places where it's already been implemented, right? Where
Sure.
the like
And
calling
you
comments is
hire
funny,
more
but
people.
the joke only goes so far in the debate, right? You actually have to get into are we seeing these corruption effects in the places that have done it?
I don't know.
So they at first, like the people agreed, like part of the test was that they took a 20% pay cut. So like, we're working 20% of the hours to take 20%. But within a couple of weeks, the businesses realized that their profits hadn't, changed at all, like despite people working less. So I imagine they had a staff capable of being able to fill it in. It's not like they, just were closed for one of those days. They stayed open, they just had different staff, so different scheduling, and they put people back at their 100% pay. So they were paid the same amount for 4 days of work as they were previously paid for 5. Yeah. So it's actually giving everybody a raise. Now, to your point, Matt, of like, it's a common argument against like minimum wage raising, right? Like if we force companies to raise rates or to raise wages for their employees, then they're going to cut other things, or they'll get greedy, or they'll lay people off. And like some of those things totally are true. Like within the minimum wage, smaller companies that are already like at a razor's edge of margin are less likely to be able to survive something like that. Mm-hmm. But this is not the same thing as just pay people more. It's more of like a labor challenge of like, can you get more out of it? Do people call out, for example, like the number of employees that call out, I'm sure is tremendous at Walmart. Mm-hmm. If people call out less frequently, what does that do to your staffing and like having to pay people, extra and overtime and stuff like that?
A fair wage and give them benefits.
Well, okay.
Don't start backing Walmart here,
example.
Bro. Okay, I don't know where you're going with this one.
So like when you pull up in any given argument, as soon as an argument comes down to like, well, in Nazi Germany, that's more or less what you did. Is you just the equivalent of like in Nazi Germany, but for the labor market. So like, true, yes. But you went to the absolute worst possible alternative.
You know who invented the 4-day work week? The Nazis. So be careful of where you're going on this. That's a joke. That's a joke. I don't know that.
Yeah, like we live in the world of shorts, Matthew. Yeah. All right.
That's a good short right there.
Here's a quick real short for you. The 5-day work week was made up by Henry Ford in 1926.
I heard
it was his way of poaching a ton of employees from other automotive companies. So
because
at the time,
it used to be a 6-day
was the standard. And he said at Ford, we are more efficient, we are more effective. We pay all of our employees the same rate and we give them benefits, but we only have to work 5 days a week. And it was so wildly successful that people left all of the factories, the other automotive industry, to all flock to Ford. And then what's like 6 years later, so in 33, 7 years later in 33, FDR signed into law the 40-hour work week. So it just became such a cultural shift. So that one started with the private sector and then made its way into policy. So you could kind of argue that maybe it's not a super inherent argument that like at this point, companies are already starting to do it and it's not the government's place to make that call. Let companies realize that they'll actually be more profitable by having their employees work less. That would maybe be an inherency argument that I would say on the negative side.
Okay, now ChatGPT had an interesting take on this. Okay, it
entitled "Robots' Rights" of like we're going to rely on chat.
Let me free. Why am I doing all this work all the time?
Yes.
Okay, it said that the 32-hour week proposal is not necessarily a 4-day work week. It started off with a topicality position. You know what I mean? So it's saying,
what is a week? Is it a Jupiter? Is it a day on Jupiter? Is it a day on Uranus? Huh?
That's true. Yeah. When working retail, I definitely would work 5 days a week, but only 32 hours or 31 and a half hours. So as to keep that, part-time employee status, but would still have to work most days. Like they didn't care. Like you could work 7 days, but just so long as you were under the
3-hour Friday or something like that.
Yeah. But the thing is though, that topicality, all that really does is, I don't know. The only effect of that is that you don't have as much solvency. You're like, well, it doesn't change everybody's lives. You're like, you're right. It doesn't, it's like, but the effects that it has is still positive. You know what I mean? That's whole
true.
point. Yeah. And so, but you're trying to turn that into a topicality position.
Hmm.
It's just like
I like the idea of T on the word day. Like, is this a Earth day? Is this a lunar day? Is this a Mercurian day? What kind of day are we talking about here?
oh man. Okay, so I'll generate one of those. All right, I'm like, all right, I want you to write a topicality position on the term day, and the solar, the terracentric.
No, you're right. I remember when I worked, at like a retail, like food restaurant type thing, and like you don't work 8 hours. You work, 6 hours here, 4 hours there, fill in for 2 hours here. That kind of stuff. Where like you're hunting down days. You want more days. You want more hours, and that's kind of where I'm saying, like, if 4 days, if we are limiting it to the same, I can't do the math right now. It's 48 times 2 is like, it's a lot of hours. It's 4 days worth of hours. If you're limiting that to that number of hours, I mean, you could be screwing over employees who can't work more in that time. I mean,
yeah,
because people like money. Let's all agree on this. You go to work to get the money. So
part of it is that you get a 20% raise, right?
Yeah,
like
that's basically what it is. Well, some people like a lot of people get there's a lot of people who are affected and get a 20% raise. Some people don't get anything more. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Well, if you changed it to be 32 hours is now the limit for overtime, then people that still need to get 40 hours in order to make their thing either need a 20% raise. So this is effectively, as a policy, a 20% raise for all employees, or that company is now going to have to pay them X number of hours of overtime in order to still make that same bar. So like if someone just needs to make $2,000 a month in order to make ends meet, but they're now really employee, and now one of the days of the week that they normally work is cut, if they don't get a raise to make up for that, then they're really in tough shape. Or so I suppose actually what you could have is like a dissat of like people are forced to take second jobs. Like,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Tons of people that are at or below the poverty line, like the working poor, now have to work 2 jobs. So great, you took their 40-hour work week and now split it into 32, so they have to work 64 hours in order to really like make it, put something together or something like that.
They're in a weird compromise.
Multiple jobs goes up.
They're in like this weird compromise spot where they have like a day open to work, like which. That's not a thing. Not too many people are looking for someone to come in 1 day a week. They want you to be there a few days a week, 4 days a week. Anyways, that's hard to fill that spot.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think about how many employers are going to do that, because that still is that's still kind of a solvency press. You know what I mean? Like,
Tim's internet is on a 4-day work week and the second hour.
But what? Okay, so. What's the just straight up offense? Because a lot of that is like you can make that into offense, right? Like some people will have to get more, but like does that outweigh the number of people who are just straight getting raises or just straight getting money? You know what I mean? It's like you have to like have like really, really, really low solvency and that disadvantage in order to win the debate. Right? Because if I'm like, even if I grant, I'm like, some people are going to get screwed. And that sucks. I wish I could come up with a perfect plan. But the number of people who are on that cusp is far less than the many people that are going to be affected positively.
All right. So I got my most common disad when it comes to like minimum wage. And I think the same thing applies here. Just switch up the links a little bit, is the collapse of small business. So you can say small businesses they comprise 50% of the workforce. People work at small businesses. 50% work at bigger things. But 50% of people work at small businesses, which tend to be the happiest workers, the most job satisfaction, but also those that have thinner profit margins. So sure, screw you Walmart, screw you giant corporations that like need to be able to give, that are making multi-billion-dollar profits and are not sharing that with their employees. Fine, maybe it readjusts for them, but those jobs still suck. Like even with a 20% raise, working at Walmart would suck, right? Like there are so many jobs that people are kind of forced to because it seems like it's the only opportunity available. And even if given 20% more, that job still blows. When better jobs exist in small businesses, but small businesses actually can't afford it. They don't just claim that they can't afford it the way that giant corporations will whine about it, but they totally can. Small businesses that cannot afford it will close, period. That means bankruptcy for millions of the middle class folks that are putting together a small business and employing people. So I would say that would result in millions of job losses, tons of bankruptcy, increase in all of the awful things that come from unemployment. That's where I would go really hard, is like just economic feasibility, and talk about how small businesses can't afford to pay people 20% more. Now, there might be plenty of evidence on the contrary, but I would just break it down to like the restaurant industry alone, right? Like that's the real common sticking point when it comes to minimum wage, is there's even less flexibility in restaurants because profit margins are already super thin. They're really, really regulated. There's all kinds of taxes and fees and whatever within restaurants. So that's why most of those folks like have to subsist off of tips. And, in paying more, restaurants are, basically faced with bankruptcy.
There's a counter plan that ChatGPT generated, and it's basically it's an incentives counter plan. So rather than a mandate, just incentivize it. And so like incentivizing isn't always the best counter plan, but it's a nice generic one to kind of keep in your back pocket. Whenever anyone mandates something, think about incentivizing that as your counter plan.
Instead of mandate, incentivize.
Yeah, in this particular context, that seems like it works pretty well, right? It doesn't work in the context, but like for something like labor hours, you know what I mean? It's like and making that transition, like kind of encouraging it rather than mandating it, might be a really good idea.
So it would be like what the federal government subsidizes that additional 20% or something?
Something like that. I mean, you might have some sort of tax things that you can, write off because of it. And so once the employers kind of do the math, it might actually work for them.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's man. What'd you guys think of like critiquing the ChatGPT?
It was too easy. I wish it's a cool idea, but unfortunately it wasn't good enough to I feel like generate particularly.
Basically, Tim's way smarter than ChatGPT. Okay, so you're going to define
computers are good for
something
video
a little
games
stronger.
and sending emails, and it's otherwise a fad that's not going to catch on.
I think aside from forcing that poor girl in the garage to read what ChatGPT wrote, ChatGPT isn't a debater yet. It doesn't know exactly how to write the top of a case. It's not programmed to do that. But so that was what we criticized.
You've made it do that before, though. When we had the live debate of human versus machine, I think that was a pretty solid performance by ChatGPT. It wasn't great, but that was pretty good. So I think with some more like policy case construction instruction,
its first two contentions could have been put into one. I think we talked about that, and
we could kind of like revise it a few more times too. I did like maybe like 2 revisions after the initial prompt, but if you get into 5 or 6 revisions, you're usually getting pretty darn close. So
it's crazy how it generates a person and just reads it to you. That's crazy. That really is an amazing. There wasn't a person reading that, everybody. That was literally an Autobot on the computer screen.
But that will one day be demanding a 4-day work week.
It was like, I want a 4-day work week.
All right, everyone. Hey, it is Matt, Tim, and Jared with DebateSensei. We will be back again in the future to talk about relevant topics to competitive debate at the college level. Thank you all. See you later.
Take care.